does. You know,
You've just been told
I
that
have
10
an
years.
unquenchable thirst for validation, arm out my self-worth to external approval in this way that I honestly, I know shrinks will tell you steer away from that, but it's pretty damn gratifying. I would never think when I meet people and I'm away from cameras and lights to ever put on a show, or even if I'm feeling crazy on the inside, I will be quiet and reserved and kind of, you know, straight.
Blake, I'll start with you. How emotional did this
The RCA dog make me?
What's that?
How emotional did seeing the RCA dog this morning make me? I mean, honestly, all I eat, sleep, and breathe is this movie. I am so proud of this movie, and this all I've eaten, slept, and breathed. That's a hard thing to past tense it for like the past year and a half. Like, that's a great example. Watching Deadpool and Wolverine in an audience of people, if you're watching that at home, like, it's just, there's the human experience of people watching and feeling together. Or a big budget movie that's fun and silly and profoundly emotional and impactful, like Deadpool, Wolverine in theaters now.
Yes.
I'm working double time, you guys.
Yeah,
I am double duty.
Hi friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. When Judge Lewis Lehman in federal court yesterday stated that the case between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively was a case of feuding PR teams, a feud about PR, about two PR companies, one representing Blake Lively and another representing Justin Baldoni, and the fuel for public narrative, controlling the narrative, and a smear campaign, with allegations being pointed in both directions that each one of them orchestrated a smear campaign. And the public, like you and I, are left to try to figure out the details. Well, today I feel like I got a better sense of what could have happened. And it comes in a filing from Brian Friedman and crew in a response to a motion to dismiss for Leslie Sloan and Vision PR. For a long time, we've been trying to figure out what the motivation is for this lawsuit. Why in December did she file this lawsuit after all of this had died down? Most of the backlash that she had received was starting to die down. She could have seemingly just moved forward and let it go. But instead, she put like pouring gasoline onto a fire. She decided she wanted to create a bonfire. And that bonfire is now burning out of control. And this public narrative that she believed she could reclaim as her own by reframing the narrative as her being the victim has really blown up in her face, because evidence that continues to be released seems to refute a lot of her claims. Also, the evidence includes video, emails, texts that are contrary to her claims. It's difficult to refute video evidence. It's difficult to refute email evidence or text messages. And it's also difficult to refute witnesses who are in the same room that didn't see things that you claim happened. With all of that happening, we've been spending quite a bit of time trying to talk and dissect some of these details about the motivating factors. And in a new filing, this is how Wayfair believes what happened. Having seized complete creative control over the film and its marketing, Lively had only herself and her publicist, Leslie Sloan, and Sloan's company, Vision PR Inc., to blame when her disastrously tone-deaf marketing efforts for the film plowed her public reputation straight into the ground. In a desperate effort to salvage Lively's reputation to escape her wrath, the Sloan's parties conspired with Lively and Consolidated Defendants Ryan Reynolds and the New York Times to make scapegoats of the Wayfair parties for Lively's woes. On information and belief, the Sloan's parties worked for months to drop breadcrumbs and hints of sinister allegations to the public while secretly feeding defamatory falsehoods to any reporter who would listen, including Megan Twohey of the New York Times. As a direct result of the actions of the Sloan parties and their co-conspirators, the Wayfair parties have been damaged beyond measure. Their reputations are destroyed, their businesses lie in tatters, and their own film was taken from them. These are the facts underpinning the Wayfair's allegations against the Sloan parties, and this is what the evidence will prove at trial. It's hard to understand to me and to so many of you that have been in the comments about why they waited until December to drop this. It had been months since the film had come out. Most of the criticism was dying down, and theoretically, she could have rebounded and just gone on with life. But Ryan and Blake, get very sensitive about criticism. They don't like it. Ryan has spoken about in interviews that mild rejections are very difficult for him. Being told no is like the end of the world for him.
I look at authorship and control, or however you want to frame it, as trust. Like, I had a point of view when I had no power, and I would be nervous, and I knew the stakes, but I had absolutely no input into what happens. And when you have a point of view and it can't be expressed, even though you try,
It's like something, a monkey rattling a cage. It's gonna like start chewing the bars.
terrible feeling. And people, when you do try to express the point of view and you're sort of placated or told, that we're not going to do that, or you say something that sort of feels reasonable, like, let's stop spending on spectacle and let's spend on character. Or like, why are we putting all the money in special effects when we could just write, and that's sort of dismissed. If that happens a couple of times, you sort of go, okay, but at the end of the day, they're not writing the story about how, Phyllis von Philistine movie bombs. They're saying they use the actor who's in it, right?
Right,
So
yes, yes.
I own the bomb.
The things that it's very clear to me that a lot of what was said by Blake on the red carpet and in her interviews are talking points and sound bites that she's heard her own husband say. He uses words like authorship, but he views authorship as control. He doesn't like it when he's dismissed. Even if he provides a great, what he believes, idea, he doesn't like being dismissed. And then he feels out of control. And that need for control is what drives him. Ryan was dismissed by Justin very early on when he didn't necessarily like the rooftop scene that Blake claimed that she wrote, but Ryan really wrote. And a lot of the issues between Blake and Justin were being fueled by her husband, Ryan. So both Blake and Ryan want control, but it's that initial rejection that I think really propels so much anger because they think they know better. They think that they can make this film better. They think they have a better barometer of the world. Equally, when they're slighted, in his own words, he gets upset and he wants that control. He spends his life trying to seek validation and attention, and he lives off of the attention he gets from films. It's like a drug to him, he says. He is a narcissist. He's saying that his entire life is around the fuel that he gets from people loving him and thinking he's a great guy. So when he isn't loved and he isn't viewed as a great guy, that's when the claws come out, which is why some of these moves by them are so irrational to me. I can't even comprehend. And then when you start looking at how the world of this PR world works and how these companies are so ruthless with each other, it's like at this point, it's hard to believe anything that you hear about any celebrity. Now, every time I see an article with a celebrity, all I think about is what is the spin? What are they trying to get ahead of? Why are they doing this? Nothing seems genuine from anyone anymore. And if this case does anything for the wider public, I think it should be that it shows us as consumers how manipulated we are by the stars and their PR teams. And clearly, Ryan and his wife Blake have had good PR teams pushing good PR for them for a very long time, that the thought that they would do something like this seems so out of the norm that there is a narrative of there's a group of people that just believe anything they say. And if you don't see it the way that Blake and Ryan have said it happened, then you are somehow an alt-right creator that is misogynistic, which isn't true. So I want to get into another piece of this story because this response gave me a lot of answers. This response to the motion to dismiss. So it says, on or about December 31st, 2022, Blake Lively agreed to take on the lead role of Lily Bloom. She was granted an executive producer credit, but Wayfair neither requested nor required that she contribute to the film in any capacity other than as an actor and executive producer, a vanity credit with no direct responsibilities. It appeared that they would have a really productive working relationship early on, but she began to intrude into the production process in ways that were beyond the scope of her contractual entitlements. She took over the wardrobe, exploded the budget for the role. She insisted on taking over writing multiple key scenes for the film, resorting to calling in her famous husband and friend as reinforcements when her script rewrites were not received enthusiastically as she hoped. She was altering the script daily. Pre-production and the first phase of filming were tenuous, with Wayfair parties tiptoeing around Lively to avoid incurring the wrath of Lively and Reynolds, resulting in delays and significant financial losses. A delicately scheduled production. At one point, she issued Baldoni an ultimatum that if he could not get on board with her work methods, he may have to recast her role. She reflected a casual, frank manner on the set, inviting Baldoni to join her in the trailer while expressing breast milk and using terms such as sexy that she later castigated others for using. She has done interviews confirming everything that he has said in that part. She has stated that she comes into films like a wrecking ball, basically, or like you're drinking straight from a fire hose, because she wants things done her way. She wants authorship. And now every time you hear the word authorship, you should just know that this means control. She wants control. It's just her code word for control. They explain how the creative differences eventually break down after they go back to filming, after everything is sorted out. Nothing happens while they finish the second half of the filming. But it says, gradually, in the end, completely, Lively took over the editing of the film, ultimately extorting Sony and Wayfair into releasing her cut, despite its poor performance with audience tests. She also dictated the film's marketing, erasing Baldoni from promotional material, and driving the light-hearted, frothy campaign for the film while peddling her own products, a decision that proved disastrous for her later on. Continued to insist on greater credit for the film, demanding that Wayfair support her request for the coveted PGA mark despite not having earned that credit, which denotes a producer who performed the majority of the work producing the film. As the premiere of the film approached in the summer of 2024, she told Sony that she and the rest of the cast would not participate in any marketing or promotion of the film alongside Baldoni, deliberately creating the false impression that Baldoni had committed some serious offense. And then on information and belief, Sloan was throughout this time working to spread false and defamatory allegations against the Wayfair parties to members of the press, both defaming the Wayfair parties and serving as muscle behind Lively's coercive threats. This all began well before backlash against Lively for her wrong-headed marketing efforts for the film, not to mention the self-promotion of her alcohol and hair care brand. Something that's interesting here is that Blake has said publicly that they issued a subpoena for the phone records for Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel, but there's absolutely no way she would have been able to obtain text message records this way unless, for instance, Stephanie Jones did it. But you can't get text messages in a subpoena. The companies will only send you the data of when texts were sent, not the actual messages. So they say that as Wayfair and Baldoni drifted away from their increasingly erratic publicist, Stephanie Jones, Jones reacted with vitriol. She seized the phone of departing publicist Jen Abel, who was serving as Joan Work's assigned point person for the Wayfair account, mined it for what she believed to be damning information, and immediately turned over that information to the Sloan's parties. The same day, Sloan called Melissa Nathan and told her that Sloan had seen Nathan's text to Abel and they should expect to be sued. It's pretty incredible because they keep saying that they did a subpoena and that's how they got these texts. But how would they have got the texts and seen them the same day that Jen turned over her phone? How would that have happened? You know how long it takes to get a subpoena? Months. She's lying. Blake is lying. At least that's how it seems to me. That's my opinion. Now armed with Abel's private text messages and communications, Lively and the Sloan parties worked hand in glove with the New York Times to concoct a story that would explain Lively's downfall by casting the blame on Wayfair's parties. After the Wayfair parties finally stood up to Lively and Reynolds and refused to accede to their final demand that the Wayfair parties put out a false and humiliating statement admitting blame and wrongdoing, the gloves finally came off. The Way parties alleged that the Sloan parties colluded with Lively, Reynolds, and the New York Times over a period of months to develop a false and defamatory news article and video in conjunction with Lively's unfounded sham complaint filed with the California Civil Rights Department. As a direct result, the Wayfair parties have suffered untold harm. It's hard to think that somebody would be so angry about their reputation taking a nosedive that in order to get out of the PR nightmare, they switch the narrative and blame the other party who didn't get taken down. Because during the press tour, Justin was not hit with negative press for the most part. A lot of that had to do with Colleen Hoover's built-in audience adoring him and appreciating the way that he was promoting the film and how he was openly speaking about the topic of what the film covered and not shying away from that, while also not being critical or rude about Lively and often praising her for her work that she accomplished on this film. And it was Lively who was consistently self-promoting her hair care line, her alcohol brand, and then in interviews for It Ends With Us was consistently interrupting interviews to promote Deadpool and Wolverine, a competing film at a competing studio that was out at the same time as hers. Can you imagine being at a like a Coca-Cola event, and then you're being interviewed, and then suddenly you're like, you need to try Pepsi? That's what she's doing. Or you're at a Microsoft event and you're like, I love my Mac Apple. My iMac is amazing. That's what she was doing. Those were her choices. She was using the marketing that she was doing for It Ends With Us to promote her husband, to promote herself. She wasn't at all caring about the story. And then she wasn't answering questions about the abuse or the domestic violence, and was consistently trying to frame this as a story of hope and women are multitudes. I hate that. If I ever hear that again, there's no such word to describe women as multitudes. She needs a new thesaurus. Later in the response to the motion to dismiss, they go through what they claim Leslie Sloan did, or what they believe she did, by going to various media outlets that she had relationships with and shopping the story that Justin Baldoni was a sexual predator, that he had sexually assaulted Blake Lively, that he was orchestrating a smear campaign against her. And that's the reason why she got so much backlash. It had nothing to do with Blake. It wasn't because Blake was self-promoting or being dismissive or being rude in videos or being rude to interviewers or interrupting or genuinely acting a fool on the press tour. It wasn't that. It was because Justin was a sexual predator. And that's what they're alleging. They'll have to prove that in court that Leslie did that. But the crux of this is that they say that the Sloan parties provided the New York Times with text messages concerning purported allegations of sexual misconduct. She and her co-conspirators apparently omitted the subsequent messages that the allegations were not true. And as far as the untraceable smear campaign, it would have been clear to the Sloan party's public relations professionals that the cause of Lively's bad press was her decision to hawk liquor and hair care products while promoting a film about domestic violence. The notion that the backlash was actually caused by an untraceable smear campaign is so inherently improbable that only a reckless person would have put that claim in circulation. There were obvious reasons to doubt the veracity of these statements, which the Sloan parties disregarded. Taken in whole, the first amended complaint alleges sufficient facts to infer actual malice on the parts of Sloan parties and other defendants. So by them shopping this around and trying to place the allegation on an untraceable smear campaign, they're able to put out their own narrative. And there's some questions here that I don't really quite understand why it was done this way. And it only seems like it's being done this way because Blake's reputation was so apparently damaged that she felt the only way that she could reclaim her status was to go to one of the largest newspapers in the country and have them report off of the civil rights complaint that she filed in California, but also providing them text messages, but cherry picking what she was giving them. It's hard to believe that Leslie Sloan, who's the publicist who also worked for Harvey Weinstein and other men that have done terrible things and helped them cover up stuff with press, that she would have no clue that this was happening. The whole point of PR is to protect their client, no matter what. And PR companies will resort to obscene levels to protect their clients. She has no loyalty to anyone but Blake because Blake is paying her bills. And she can be motivated to do this because if Blake's reputation goes down and she loses brand deals, Leslie then loses money too because she loses a client who's no longer profitable. So the publicist has incentive to promote the narrative that they believe will help that person get out of a crisis, even if it's not true. And they know it's not true. And Baldoni and Wayfair's attorneys say that there's two specific things that Leslie Sloan did in conspiracy and in collaboration with Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and the New York Times. And that was allegations that certain of the Wayfair parties, specifically Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath, engaged in sexual misconduct towards Blake Lively, and allegations that Wayfair parties orchestrated a retaliatory smear campaign to damage Lively's image and reputation after she reported her purported misconduct. Here's what's bothering me about Blake. I worked in professional corporate America for 17 years. I dealt with sexual harassment in the workplace and had coworkers viewing pornography while we were working. I reported that to HR. I then refused to associate with those coworkers. They were moved to a different area, not seated anywhere away from me. Ultimately, one of them was fired. If you are concerned about sexual harassment in the workplace and it's your boss that's doing it, why stay on a film that's quote unquote low budget, beneath you, and not important in the grand scheme? You don't need the money. Your husband has the money. Why stay if these people are so terrible? If they've done what she claims they've done, why would she stay on that set? If that were me, I would not have stayed on that set. But what she's alleging they did doesn't even make sense to me. Discreetly sucking on her bottom lip? What? Using the word sexy? This is a film that has sex scenes. I don't know. Seeing a still frame from a video of a birth and equating that to pornography. These are not actual issues. These are not actual claims. And if they were claims, she should have gone through the proper channels. And that is where I will stake my belief that I don't believe her. Because if you have been sexually harassed in the workplace, you use the proper channels. You file a complaint with HR. If you're in a union, you go to the union and you file a complaint. But Blake couldn't go to the union to file a complaint because Blake was violating the union's contracts and bylaws by working on a film without a signed contract. Blake couldn't bring SAG in because she was violating SAG's rules. And if she hadn't signed the contract yet and she's using that not signed contract as leverage, it doesn't, and none of that sounds like someone that's been sexually harassed. These are not the steps one takes if you've been a victim. And what bothers me about her is that women that are sexually harassed in the workplace, like me, thankfully, my employer believed me and my employer dealt with it. And there was evidence and proof for what had happened. But there's lots of women out there that deal with this in the workplace that their employers do nothing or they're not believed. And she makes it harder for those kinds of women to be believed. And it bothers me that she's making people say that if you don't believe her, you don't believe women. No, I don't believe Ryan. Ryan's as much a part of this as Blake. So if you don't believe Blake, it means I really don't believe Ryan. I don't believe Ryan in anything. I think he's a liar. And I think he's angry, and I think he wanted control, and I think she wanted control. Because if you despised Wayfair so much, it makes no sense to take over control of the edit. It makes no sense to take over the production and use your editors and bring in your composers and get people to quit and get people fired. If you don't like Wayfair, you quit and you leave. But she couldn't, because then she would have been in breach of contract. And she breached the contract over and over and over again. And then she weaponized the contract. And that's the part that really bothers me about all of these outlets that don't look at Baldoni's side. Oh, but she said it happened, so it must be true. We've already learned that Mr. Reynolds will lie about anything. She has admitted they will lie about anything. All they care about is the adoration they receive, and they cannot get enough of it. And so their reputation is all that matters to them. And when you hear Ryan say that he cannot get enough of external validation, that's all you need to know. This isn't, and what pisses me off is that they brought this public when it never needed to be. They could have filed they could have filed the issue with California and not given it to the press. They didn't have to. They did that intentionally because they wanted the PR that story would give them, because she's obsessed with her reputation. A normal person would not do that. A normal person would not run to the press and be like, here's proof. And this is why no one should hate me. Only people that give a shit about their reputations do that. And I'm a tiny content creator, low influence, according to her, low influence public figure. And people say crap about me every single day. They talk shit. There's channels dedicated to talking about me, making videos about me. And I don't care. Because if you know it's not true, then who gives a crap what anyone says? The reason why I think they're doing it is because they know it's true and they need a way out. And that's why she's using a CIA operative now for her crisis PR. So that's what I got today. That all of this was just a game, a PR game. And that's why Judge Louis Lyman called this a feud between PR companies. PR agencies. It's a battle for reputation. That's all it is. And poor Justin got like demolished in the process. And he's not perfect. I mean, I would have fired her if she was acting like that. You know, I would have gotten rid of her right away. But hindsight is 2020. So, what are your thoughts about this spin? Are you surprised? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell to never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.